The world, it was believed on biblical authority, was 6/7 land and 1/7 water. Because the principles of salvation were fixed and could be cultivated through efforts in the lands known to Christendom, there was no reward for venturing past the fringes of civilization. In the Inferno, Dante described Ulysses sailing out through the Pillars of Hercules, the Rock of Gibraltar, and the adjacent heights of North Africa at the western edge of the Mediterranean Sea in search of knowledge, and being punished for his transgression against God's plan by a whirlwind that dooms his ship and all its crew. The modern era announced itself when enterprising societies sought glory and wealth by exploring the oceans and whatever lay beyond them. In the 15th century, Europe and China ventured forth almost contemporaneously. Chinese ships, then the world's largest and technologically most advanced, undertook journeys of exploration reaching Southeast Asia, India, and the east coast of Africa. They exchanged presents with local dignitaries, enrolled princes in China's imperial tribute system, and brought home with them cultural and zoological curiosities. Yet, following the head navigator Zheng He's death in 1433, the Chinese emperor put an end to overseas adventures, and the fleet was abandoned. China continued to insist on the universal relevance of its principles of world order, but it would henceforth cultivate them at home and with the peoples along its borders. It never again attempted a comparable naval effort until perhaps our own time. 60 years later, the European powers sailed from a continent of competing sovereign authorities. Each monarch sponsored naval exploration largely in the hope of achieving a commercial or strategic edge over his rivals. Portuguese, Dutch, and English ships ventured to India. Spanish and English ships journeyed to the Western Hemisphere. Both began to displace the existing trade monopolies and political structures. The age of 3 centuries of preponderant European influence in world affairs had been launched. International relations, once a regional enterprise, would henceforth be geographically global, with the center of gravity in Europe, in which the concept of world order was defined and its implementation determined. A revolution of thinking about the nature of the political universe followed. How was one to conceive of the inhabitants of regions no one had known existed? How did they fit into the medieval cosmology of empire and papacy? A council of theologians, summoned by Charles V in 1550-1551, in the Spanish city of Valladolid, had concluded that the people living in the Western Hemisphere were human beings with souls, hence eligible for salvation. This theological conclusion was, of course, also a maxim justifying conquest and conversion. Europeans were enabled to increase their wealth and salve their consciences simultaneously. Their global competition for territorial control changed the nature of international order. Europe's perspective expanded until successive colonial efforts by various European states covered most of the globe and concepts of world order merged with the operation of the balance of power in Europe.